What's good, guys? It's Rules here, back again with another video. Today's video is going to be about Darkhorse candidates to potentially win Worlds. Disclaimer, this list will not include the decks that I expect to win or have a very good chance at winning. The decks that I will not be including: Mega Ray, Night March. Here's all the Night March stuff. Can get that. So no Mega Ray, no Night March, no Aqua Box, and no Trevenant. So none of those decks will be on the list. Other than that, it's pretty fair game. The first deck, I guess I'll just get right into it. This is going to be from the least rogue to most rogue, in my opinion. The first deck I'm going to talk about is Zoroark. This deck isn't really expected to do too much, but its ability, stand in. Once during your turn before your attack, if this Pokemon is on your bench, you may switch this Pokemon with your active Pokemon. Already, that's pretty good ability. Keldeo had it, or something similar to it, back from Boundaries Crossed. And then his attack is what we really want to focus on. Mind Jack. For a double colorless, it does 10 and then 30 more for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. This can be really huge for when your opponent benches things like Shaman, decks that worry about stacking the bench, such as Rayquaza. It's pretty much an auto loss to Zoroark if you don't set up fast enough. If you don't set up first turn getting out a Mega Rayquaza and attacking if you're going second, you pretty much lose to Zoroark. Zoroark has a few other great matchups, such as Trevenant, because of the dark weakness Trevenant has. It is a little difficult to get around item lock, but if you can get at least a little bit around item lock, Zoroark can easily beat Trevenant. Really, the only matchup you have to really worry about with Zoroark is Night March. Night March does beat Zoroark. Sorry, Zoroark usually can't beat Night March. Night March has to have a pretty bad start for Zoroark to beat it, which it happens before. Usually only when I play it, but it's possible for Night March to set up slow enough that Zoroark can be good. And that's why I think it is definitely a potential candidate at winning Worlds. In no way am I saying it's going to or predicting that it will, but it's possible. The second deck I'm going to talk about is Greninja. Greninja is a really fast deck, surprisingly, for getting out of Stage 2 because of Frogadier's attack. Water duplicates. It, for 1 water, lets you search your deck for up to 3 Frogadier and put them directly onto your bench. Next turn, you have the option to evolve all 4 Greninjas. Usually you can only get down 1 to 2, but still, if you can get 2 Greninjas down and then Wally into a break, you're hitting for a lot of damage. You're dealing enough to Night March to where you can knock out several Night Marchers every turn. Night March usually loses to Greninja. As far as Mega Ray, I think Greninja is at a big disadvantage to Mega Ray. Just because Mega Ray sets up way faster than Greninja, even though Greninja sets up fairly fast. And then Trevenant, it's a fairly even matchup when Greninja faces Trevenant. Just the item lock hurts Greninja, but a giant water shuriken plus a I'm drawing a blank on Greninja's second attack. I can't remember. I think it's like water return or something like that. But that knocks out a Trevenant, and I think knocks out a Trevenant break if you bring the energy back to your hand and have a muscle band. So I mean, it's a fairly even matchup when those 2 decks face each other. It would definitely be a surprise to see Greninja win, but also a possibility. The third deck I'm going to talk about is Mega Manectric with Giratina. Mega Manectric, this deck won U.S. Nationals this year by a junior, I believe it was, won the Nationals or placed second. He placed very highly with this deck. This deck does get a little weaker with things like Pokemon Ranger coming out to stop Jolteon, because Jolteon's second attack, Flash Ray gets shut off, or gets beaten by Pokemon Ranger, because Pokemon Ranger removes all effects on each player and his Pokemon. And Jolteon's second attack is all about stopping basics from hitting you. The one advantage Mega Manectric does get is that it really, really easily beats Mega Rayquaza. As you can see, Turbo Bolt does 110 damage. Rayquaza has 220 HP and an electric weakness. So that's a perfect 220. You cannot one-shot Mega Rayquaza. While Manectric does set up slower, it can hit harder than Mega Rayquaza. And that's why I believe that Mega Manectric has a slim chance, but it does have a chance. Not to mention that Turbo Bolt also one-shots a Trevenant that is not Break Evolved. So the only thing stopping this from being potentially a Tier 1 deck is Night March. Night March, if you face that with this deck, you pretty much have to scoop. Or try your best to set up a Giratina, because Giratina can beat Night March if you can stop them from playing double colorless energies, and hope that they don't play a Pokemon Ranger. Pokemon Ranger is the one thing that slows this deck up the most. While Manectric is good, it's not great. It could have a shot. It's a very slim shot, but it's definitely there. The next deck I'm going to talk about is Fire Toolbox. Fire Toolbox, the main attacker is Flareon EX with the attack Blaze Ball for 50 base, and then it does 20 more for each fire energy attached to this Pokemon. With things like Max Elixir speeding this up, you can just Flash Fire, which lets you move an energy from one of your Pokemon to this Pokemon, one of your basic fire. Oh no, it just says fire. So it can be a burning energy. Not sure why you would want a burning energy on Flareon, but the option's there. You can do a lot of damage with Volcanion EX. It lets you discard a fire energy from your hand, and then you do 30 more damage with your basic fire types. And then even though Baby Volcanion can beat Night March, because it does for 20 damage, and then you choose 2 Pokemon on your bench, and you attach a fire energy to both. So that attack can be used to power up Flareons, and with a Fighting Fury Belt, you knock out a Joltik in one hit. With a Muscle Band, there's not really much else you can do. The main thing you're going to be running is Fighting Fury Belts. But this deck can hit hard. I don't think it hits hard enough against Mega Rayquaza, and I feel like that's going to be the one thing slowing this deck down. I feel like it has a very good Night March matchup. I feel like it has a fairly strong Trevenant matchup, and it is an auto loss to Aquabox. Aquabox is definitely a major stick in the mud as far as this deck, but this next deck will pretty much just be selectively beating up on Aquabox, and that is Vespiquen Vileplume. This deck is very good with Vileplume, blocking each player's hands from playing items, and Vespiquen using Bee Revenge for a double colorless does 20 and then 10 more for each Pokemon in your discard pile. With Forest of Giant Plants, you can evolve first turn. The dream is to get a Vespiquen with a DCE and a Vileplume on your bench first turn. That can hit for a lot of damage. It slows things down, such as Mega Rayquaza, where you're going to have to hit big numbers. You can at least two-shot it, and sometimes even one-shot it if you have enough Pokemon in your discard pile. As far as Night March, you just have to hope that you can set up a Vileplume first turn, and that's really the only way you beat it. Trevenant has a very rough match up against Trevenant, because if your Vileplume gets Lysandered out and it doesn't have a Float Stone, Trevenant Break starts hitting 30 on each of your Pokemon, and Vileplume has no way to retreat due to its heavy 3 retreat cost, and that requires playing 2 DCE just to retreat. And you're under item lock, so you can't play things like Special Charge to get your DCEs back. And I believe Vespiquen lists normally only run 4 DCE. They don't run basic energies to help Vileplume retreat. The only way you can retreat Vileplume is playing an AZ or playing a Float Stone while you're a Gloom, because you can't play Float Stone once you have Vileplume out due to its ability locking both players. Unless your opponent played a Hex or something, you cannot use Vileplume, you cannot attach a Float Stone to a Vileplume. So that is all the decks I'm going to be talking about for today. If you guys liked any of these decks or are interested in playing some of these decks for Worlds, I would definitely advise, of these decks, Zoroark is the best of these, but feel free to play whatever you want. Worlds is definitely competitive, as it always has been, and there is a chance for every one of these decks to win.